So we're going to start graphing lines today. We're first going to talk about what is slope, because that kind of is going to help us a little bit with a couple of questions. So our slope is our rate of change. And our slope determines the steepness and direction of our line. So our slope is known as a rate of change, and what it does, it determines the steepness and the direction of our line. Our slope can fall into one of four categories. Our slope can be positive. If it's positive, that means it's going up and to the right. When we figure out what our slope is, we always look at the right end. Wherever the right end is pointing, that's what tells us if our slope is positive or negative. And it's going to be in the form of y equals mx plus b. If our slope is negative, it's going to go down from left to right. So notice that the right end here is pointing down, and its equation is also in the mx plus b form, but its m is negative. If we have a slope of 0, now 0 and undefined are our two special slopes. A 0 slope is a line that goes straight across, and its equation is going to be in the form of y equals b. And b is just some number, but that b is important because that b value is whatever this point is here, and this ordered pair is the ordered pair 0b. So wherever that graph crosses the y-axis, that's what its equation is y equals b. So, and our last slope is an undefined slope. A slope that's undefined is up and down. Okay, and it crosses, its equation is x equals a, and a is some number here, whatever this point is, which is our x-intercept, and it's in the form of a, comma, 0. So for 1 and 2, we're going to graph two lines. So we have an equation y equals 4. So what I want you to notice is look back up here at these positives and negatives. Notice that this negative line here, it has an x and a y, and it touches the x-axis and the y-axis. The same is true here. This positive slope, the equation has an x and a y, and it touches the x and the y-axis. This line right here only touches the y-axis, so it only has a y. This line only touches the x-axis, so it only has an x. It's very important that you remember that. So if we have y equals 4, which is what we have here, since it just has y, it's only going to touch the y-axis. So it's horizontal, its slope is going to be 0. And what it means is that no matter what x is, it does not matter, the y value is always 4. So it's going to be a horizontal line that goes through 4 on the y-axis. That's our graph. And if we look at number 2, it says x equals -2. So since this equation just has x, it's only going to touch the x, so it has to be a vertical line. So its graph is going to go through -2 on the x-axis. That means its slope is undefined. And that means for every y value, the x value is always -2. All right, in standard form of a line is the form that's written AX, and please make sure you're capitalizing this because this is different than what we did with A and B a second ago. So AX plus BY equals C. This is called the standard form of a line. And A, B, and C are real numbers, and A and B cannot both be 0. So A, B, and C are real numbers, and A and B cannot both be 0. So some vocabulary. The X-intercept is the ordered pair, some number 0. X-intercept is some number 0. It is where the graph crosses the x-axis. So notice on this graph it is here at this value. It always occurs when y equals 0, and it is also known as the 0 of the graph. You're going to be asked about that a lot. So the 0 of the graph is the x-intercept. They're synonyms for each other. The y-intercept, on the other hand, is the ordered pair 0 and then some number. And it's where the graph crosses the y-axis. It is where the graph crosses the y-axis. And it occurs when x equals 0. So our y-intercept is this point here. So we're supposed to identify the x and the y-intercepts and the zeros of this following graphs. So my x-intercept, remember, is where it crosses the x-axis. So it's this point. That would be the ordered pair 30, 0. My y-intercept is where the line touches the y-axis. This is going to be, well, this one's weird. It's not actually at a number. So let's think if this is 20 and this is 30, then in the middle there has to be 25. So it's going to be the ordered pair 0, 25. Notice that for my y-intercept, x equals 0, and for my x-intercept, y equals 0. Okay, so for each one, the opposite is 0. Now, when you're finding the 0 of your function, this is the new word we talked about, the 0 is the x-intercept. So our x-intercept in this case is this 30, so that's our 0. The 0 isn't the ordered pair, it's just the number, so it's just 30. So I want you to try number 4 on your own, so I want you to pause the video and see if you can figure it out. So your x-intercept for this function was this point here, which is the ordered pair 2, 0. Your y-intercept was this point here, which is 0, -2. And recall our 0 is the same thing as our x-intercept, so our 0 is 2. To graph an equation in standard form, we have to find two things. So when they give us something in the form of ax plus by equals c, we need to be able to graph it. So to find the x-intercept, we do one thing. We plug in 0 for y and solve for x. And to find the y-intercept, we plug in 0 for x and we solve for y. We're going to make it a little bit easier than that, I promise. So look at number 5. The first thing I want to find is I want to find my x-intercept. Well, it just told us to find the x-intercept, y needed to equal 0. So imagine, and you don't have to write this right now, but imagine that we put 0 in here for y. Well, 4 times 0 is 0, so we really just have 3x equals 12. So to make our life a little bit easier, this is what we're going to do. To find our x-intercept, we're going to cover up y. And our equation becomes 3x equals 12. So to solve this, we're going to divide both sides by 3, and we get x equals 4. So there's my x-intercept. So it would be the ordered pair 4, 0. Then to find my y-intercept, we're going to cover up x. So we get the equation 4y equals 12. So we're going to divide both sides by 4, and we get y equals 3. So my y-intercept is the ordered pair 0, 3. Remember, your 0 is also your x-intercept, so it's going to be the number 4. So now we're going to graph this. Well, that's easy. Our x-intercept is 4, 0. That's going to be over here on the x-axis. Our y-intercept is 0, 3. That's going to be up here on the y-axis. And if I connect that and draw my line, I've graphed it. So there's my line. So number 6, I want you to pause the video and I want you to try it on your own. I will, when you hit unpause, I will go through explaining how to find it. So I'm going to tell you, first of all, that our x-intercept was 2, 0. Our y-intercept was 0, -4. So let's talk about how to find those in case you weren't sure. So we have our equation 2x minus y equals 4. So to find our x-intercept, we're going to cover up y, and we get the equation 2x equals 4. Well, I'm going to divide both sides by 2, and I get x equals 2. So that's where the x-intercept of 2, 0 came from. To find our y-intercept, I'm going to cover up x. Notice I did not cover up my sign. That's very important. So it says negative y equals 4. So to get y by itself, remember there's a negative 1 there. To get rid of a negative 1, I'm going to divide both sides by negative 1. Y equals negative 4. So that's where the ordered pair 0, negative 4 came from. So my 0, remember my 0 is the same thing as my x-intercept, so it is 2. So I have points then at 2, 0, which is here on the x-axis, and negative 4, 0, which is here on the y-axis. And if I were to connect those, I would get my line. So the question asks you, how could you make sure you graphed it correctly? Well, you've got a couple options. You could solve these equations for y and graph them, or you could find another point on the line and see if it works as well. This is a little harder to do because my lines aren't very straight, but if you could imagine that there should be a point here on this line at 1, negative 2. So if I were to plug those values back in here for x, so do 2 times 1 minus negative 2, and see if I get 4. Well, on the left, 2 times 1 is 2. Negative 2, or minus negative 2 is plus 2. And 2 plus 2 is 4. And 4 equals 4. So that means I did this correctly. Alright, so the 0 of a function, remember that it is also called the x-intercept. The 0 of the function is also called the x-intercept. And the 0 is the x value when y equals 0 or when f of x equals 0. So what we're doing is we're plugging in 0 for y. So a 0 is just saying that the 0 is the x-intercept. It's the same thing as saying 0. The 0 is when y equals 0. So we're supposed to find the 0 of the function f of x equals 2x plus 8. So we want to plug in 0 for f of x. So 0 equals 2x plus 8. And then we've got to solve. So to solve this, I need to get x's on one side, everything else on the other. So I'm going to minus 8 from both sides. So negative 8 equals 2x. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So x equals negative 4. So that would be my answer. That's my 0 of my function would be negative 4. So if we look at question number 9, it says an artist rents a booth at an art show for $300. The function f of x equals 50x minus 300 represents the artist's profit, where x is the number of paintings the artist sells. So first of all, I need to find the 0. So that means I'm going to set 0 equal to 50x minus 300. And I'm going to solve for x. I'm going to draw my line, label my sides, x is on one side, everything else on the other. So I'm going to add 300 to both sides. And I get 300 equals 50x. And then to get x completely by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by 50. And I get that x equals 6. So that's my 0, is at 6. So the question asks you to explain what the 0 means in this situation. So what this means is that when x is 6, y is 0. Remember, it says this function represents the artist's profit. So what that's saying is that f of x equals the artist's profit. And we're finding the 0, so we're saying that 0 equals the artist's profit. And what that translates into is saying that at 6 pieces of artwork or 6 paintings that they're selling, they've made 0 money. That's called their break-even point. because that's the point where he's paid back everything he's put in. He's paid back his $300 that he had to pay to rent the booth, and he's broke even now. Lastly, number 10, the school band is selling sweatshirts and baseball caps to raise $9,000 to attend a band competition. Sweatshirts cost $25 each, and baseball caps cost $10 each. The equation 25x plus 10y equals 9,000 models the situation where x is the number of sweatshirts sold and y is the number of baseball caps sold. Answer the questions below and then graph the situation on the graph to the right. So we have this equation, 25x plus 10y equals 9,000. And we're supposed to, first of all, find the intercept, or find and interpret the intercepts. So to find our x-intercept, remember I'm going to cover up my y value. And I get this equation of 25x equals 9,000. So that's easy. I'm going to divide both sides by 25. And I'm going to get x equals 360. So that's my x-intercept. Now I've got to find my y-intercept. So I'm going to cover up my x value. My y-intercept is going to be 10y equals 9,000. So I'm going to divide both sides by 10. And that tells me my y-intercept is 900. So as an ordered pair, my x-intercept would be 360, 0. Now remember, x was the number of sweatshirts. And y was the number of hats. It told us that in our equation. So what this means is that 360 sweatshirts and no hats and 0 hats cost $9,000. Then it also means that for my y-intercept, which would be the ordered pair 0, 900, that if you had 0 sweatshirts and 900 hats, it would also cost $9,000. So that's what our x and our y-intercepts mean. So the next question said, if 258 sweatshirts are sold, how many baseball caps are sold? So we still have our equation, 25x plus 10y equals 9,000. And they're telling us in this, it says sweatshirts. Well, sweatshirts is our x value. So we're going to replace the x with 258. So 25 times 258 plus 10y equals 9,000, and we're going to solve. So I'm going to draw my line. I'm solving this for y, so y is on one side, everything else on the other. So first I'm going to multiply 25 times 258, which is going to give me 6,450 plus 10y equals 9,000. To get y by itself, I'm going to minus 6,450 from both sides. So 10y equals 2,550. And lastly, to get y by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by 10. So y is going to equal 255. So that's another point that would be on our line. It would be the point 258, 255. And that means that 258 sweatshirts and 255 hats cost us $9,000. So when I go to graph this, remember the first 2 points we found. We found our x-intercept to be 360, 0, and we found our y-intercept to be 0, 900. So on the x-axis, in order to get 360 there, clearly I can't count by 1, so let's count by 50. So I'm going to start at 0, I'm going to skip 50 and I'm just going to write 100, skip 150 and write 200, skip 250 and write 300, and skip 350 and write 400. On the y-axis, I need to go up to 900, so I'm just going to go by 100. So 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, and 900. So my y-intercept was the point 0900. That's going to be here. My x-intercept was the point 360, so that's going to be a little bit past 350 and 0. So there's my 2 points. I'm going to connect those dots together to form my line. And what I want you to understand is that every point on the line, is a way to make $9,000. Every point on this line is a different way to make $9,000. Now, it's really hard to tell where these points are because it's so far zoomed out, but every single point, that's exactly what it does. So our other point that we found, our 258, 255, should be on this line. Well, if we kind of estimate where that is, 258 is going to be about right here, give or take, and 255 should be, if this is 200, this would be 250, so it should be maybe here. Well, notice there's a point about right there. And granted, this graph is a little bit off because it's hard to draw straight lines, but you get the idea that all of these points on this line are going to be solutions. So for this last part, part D here, it says that you need to find 2 more possible solutions in the context of this problem. So you need to find 2 more sets of numbers, a number of sweatshirts and a number of hats that will cost $9,000. That's your final task.